All right, everyone, welcome to the Soul Potential CEO podcast. I'm your host, Tia Marie, and we are speaking with Guild Charter member Michelle Drury, who is a visionary creator and the founder of Whole Soul Lifestyle. Today, we're diving into her journey, her magic, and the soul-aligned evolution that she steps into consistently through her work. So welcome, Michelle. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me and for having this podcast to have people with me on it.
My pleasure. All right, so let's get started. I want to hear about what is lighting you up. What are you excited about in your personal or creative journey at the moment?
I am working on a few things. One is my website, and two is getting a few books in order, but really having the platform and the place that people can come and connect with me and my work and also support people just through having a space online. I'm always working on is the inner dynamics of myself and paying attention or giving myself time to understand and develop and evolve in a way that is transformative to myself and also to the work that I bring into the world. So those are two things that I'm playing with right now.
Yeah, so you're getting your project fully launched and you are always on your journey of personal exploration. One of the things I love about you, knowing you for years, is that you move at your own pace. You're always finding pockets of expansion and potential. And I think there's this through line of your own inner depth, which I assume speaks to your work when it comes to whole soul lifestyle. So if you could describe your mission or your work in one sentence, what would it be? I think I'm going to bust everybody with this one right off the bat because I don't know if I could do this task.
We can always try, right? I help others to connect with themselves and in that connection, find who they truly are, cultivate the truth that they know, but maybe are disconnected from or have trouble accessing, and essentially be in a place inside of themselves where they're navigating through life through a sense of self fulfillment and joy and happiness in the essence that they are. That was not one sentence. Let's just say that.
It was one run-on sentence, which I'm also very good at crafting. I'm like the master of a run-on sentence.
I know, right? I was like, when? And then I was like, I could have put a period there mentally. But really, in terms of my work, what I really help people work on is gaining body awareness and mindful living approach, as well as energy mastery in themselves.
Thank you for that. Let's talk about your big vision. Can you share with me your personal definition of whole soul lifestyle and what that work means to you?
Yeah. Also, lifestyle is living embodied from a sense of self and a source of knowing that you get to actualize in reality and feel like this sense of assurance consistently. So it's a really beautiful way of understanding self. I would say is almost like embodiment practices.
Mhm.
And the work to me is so important because as we've all had many experiences on a spiritual path or evolving into understanding ourselves more fully, from my experience, there seems to be these sort of stages, moments, phases where things can get really difficult or become really challenging. And I have found in my experience and with working other people, it's that we do come across these points where it's very difficult to either relate to ourselves, understand ourselves, and or relate to others and or have them understand us. And if those bridges can be met with support and understanding on a holistic level, it is just so much quicker to get through these moments and stages and phases. And honestly, where those paths may lead if you don't get that support is, from what I've seen, pretty detrimental and can be really, like I said, challenging, difficult, more so than is needed to be. So my mission is to support people to become more aligned with themselves and not have to deal with all of that hardship.
But what you're really talking about is interconnections and connections with other people. And you have found that when you become aligned with the interconnections and move through that quickly, as well as become aligned with how you connect with other people and move through that quickly, it eases up the suffering of not seeing yourself and not being understood by others.
Totally, and that's just, like, one side, right? I'm not really as much into marketing to that suffering piece, but I just wanted to explain it as a component. The other side is, like, when you do get that functional foundation and self-awareness, then what comes of that is just so much more space for you to live embodied in your authentic self.
Beautiful. What called you into the project of whole soul lifestyle? What made you say yes to it when it started to form in your awareness?
That's a long story. In essence, I was in my own journey and I didn't know what it was. But when I did start to have this ability and skill, I had my awakening. And part of what I would describe as maybe a testimony in that moment when this was all happening, I didn't really understand what was happening. I was receiving so much information on what would be considered, let's say, downloads from myself and source, as I literally asked in one moment of despair to be connected. It just happened. And I was not equipped necessarily. All of this data and information started sourcing through myself. And somewhere in that journey, which has been an ongoing journey, but like maybe within the first 6 months, this might have happened between 3 and 6 months around then, with all of that information, the term just came to me through meditation or sitting with my
Mm.
practice, and it was full soul lifestyle. And it's been like that pretty much since. And
So you knew that quite early on.
yeah. And I actually knew that it was the terms. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, of course. I call that the main event download. So I talked about this in Entity Mastermind. I have found this to be true. So I love this story because mine was similar. So I had what I called one main event download, which happened in a moment, and I was not equipped in any facet of the human
You laugh
language.
about it now, right?
Yeah, like I was like, I don't even have words to describe. I just witnessed something and I felt like I was being downloaded volumes and volumes of information. And I think my best visual at the time was like, I was like, just books on books. That's how much information came to me. And when I look back after 10 years of that experience, some part of me knew exactly what it was. So like you said, it was always whole soul lifestyle. For me, it was always whatever that was. I've just been distilling it and being a part of it and unlayering it for a decade. It's quite an incredible process. I love it.
Yeah, something just to bring up on the side. I was like, isn't it fascinating? That seems to be the thing that really ends up supporting the journey, right? Like the more
Yeah.
you see it, and it's just a fascinating inner dynamic with reality and self and other. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, it's like the anchor. All right. So what is one thing that you've discovered about yourself throughout this journey? What is like the one main thing you think, if you could name one of the most important things that you've discovered about your identity throughout this journey?
I think the main one is how capable I am
Mm,
because, and it's really comes down to self belief.
hmm.
I mean, is there more to say?
I love that. I love that. That's all you have to say about that. No, there's not. No explanations needed. In what ways do you see whole soul lifestyle impacting individuals and also the collective, like the concept of whole soul lifestyle?
For individual empowerment, manifestation, which really is like self actualization, what that is just on an individual level, right? In that, if I could even describe the sensations that come through from a person who's really soul connected and soul identified, it's like the eternal flavor of, spiritual ice cream or something.
Mhm.
Um, but, and it's just so fun. It feels fun. It is, but it's just so, like
Delicious.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's there's je ne sais quoi
Yeah.
anyway of life. So, on a collective level, though, sometimes I just imagine how off the world either can be, seem, is, and how I feel that the world would be very different if people were operating from a sense of self and this sensation in life, how motivated they would be from a sense of this pure essence and joy, whatever the terms are that resonate with them from that
Right.
space. It's not really describable per se. Like, for instance, if I were to say that I had some sort of objective, a result of that, I guess I would almost limit it in and of itself. But I think that understanding that when we do live and operate in that way, what can come of it is beyond our knowing. And I think that
Right.
it can be beyond our knowing in the most positive frames of recognition that can possibly exist. And that's what I'm aiming for.
Agree. I remember having a conversation with my boyfriend once about littering. We're we were driving through the woods. It was a very simple conversation. He's just like, "Man, people throw so much garbage in the earth, and it's just so horrible." And I thought to myself, people wouldn't do that if they saw themselves fully
Mm.
and saw their connection to everything around them. So how can you really solve a problem that is actually a symptom of lack of self-awareness and connection on such a massive level when the solution to the problem is simple, not simple. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It has such huge effects.
Yes. And it's interesting because the dialogue that we're having about a connection like this inside of yourself, I consider it almost simple now, but the journey there, not so simple. It doesn't really matter because wherever you begin is where it begins. I saw a shirt today that was like everything that you just said was like such a huge concept, right? But then this shirt that I saw today, stand for what you stand on. I was like standing on earth. And so I just think that's such a little nutshell of what we talk about when people say things like stand for what you stand on. But to people, it's yes, they feel it, they know it, they understand it, but are they doing or living it? Not really.
And what does that mean for them? Yeah, in an embodied sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
This is what I geek out on all the time.
I see, to be honest, I see all different sorts of ways that people are behaving while affirming the thing that they're saying that they are against. And I'm like,
Yes.
realize like that can't work out that way. And sometimes it gets me like almost mad because I'm like, am I the only you? How is this even possible? It's so obvious that, but
Yeah, if you are against something, you are still a part of it. Do you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
And people get really confused about that because they feel like the position of not being in something separates them from the dynamic or the paradigm that they are against. But if you are not enrolled in something, there's nothing to be against. I don't know. We could talk about that forever. I digress.
well,
Let's talk about you. Talk to me about micro journeys for the soul. This month inside of the Guild, we are sharing a special experience inside of Whole Soul Lifestyle. Micro Journeys of the Soul is the project that you are rolling out. Tell me what that means to you and how someone could experience it.
yeah. So a micro journey of the soul is when you step into yourself and you take that devoted period of time to access the part that desires your attention at that moment. It fits for any person. If you're someone who would like to have more self belief, which can translate to a myriad of other sort of descriptive self descriptors, confidence, peace, love, all the things. Um, this is definitely someone who that it will be impactful for. Self belief is something that's cultivated, it's experienced from within yourself. It's not something that somebody can give to you. It can be something that other people support you with, like on either a surface level or an intimate level, on all sorts of levels. But what I work with when it's a microdose of the soul is getting it from yourself and seeing yourself and knowing yourself in ways and areas that maybe you haven't encountered before. And so I feel that it's become so important for people to get acquainted with this aspect of themselves, whether that has to do with releasing or integrating or transmuting, catalyzing, all the different things. This happens numerous times over your lifetime. A lot of people talk about an awakening can be like a macro dose of the soul, right? Like your soul is like banging, is decided to force an entry its way through this situation. Awakenings are a lot. And then a micro dose of the soul is understanding that you can do this and it doesn't have to be overwhelming and it can be really self supporting. It can actually just be relieving while also fulfilling. It is just awesome. Just access point in yourself. It's not elusive. It's there and you can do it with or without me, but it's important to do it in general.
Mm. What does it give you, do you believe? You talked about confidence and being able to understand yourself and know yourself, and I'm assuming that perhaps the microdosing of the soul helps with the macrodose that you've already experienced to put that into definition and maybe find ways where it's useful to you in life. But what would you say, like, how would I know if that offering was something that I was ready for?
If you feel like you're in a position where you know and things are not working out,
Mm,
that's a great time. If you feel something is not right, but you have hope and you can't figure out the way between, that's a great time. If there's despair, there's like some specific sensations that typically it's like not having resolve within yourself is a great time to have a microdose of the soul because the soul is very healing. It's the purest part of yourself. So there's an emotional context that you can evaluate yourself through and getting support is hard. It's not an easy thing. Putting yourself out there, that is very vulnerable. And I can understand that. Another reference point would be like you have a vision, you don't know how to get there, or you know you're meant for something, but it's just not happening. You could want to just step in because you want to see more. That could be on a personal scale, that could be on a success scale. It just depends. Sometimes this is where you get to when you've been doing a lot of the work a lot of the times and you've received you feel like you're in a safe space to be doing all the things that you're doing, and yet you're like, "Let's just get elated." And it's all good. It's all great. It's really fun.
it sounds like a sustained spiritual awakening or an intentional ceremony with the soul, similar to how a lot of people use things like ayahuasca or different journeying, psychedelic journeying to tap into that source so that they can have that expanded awareness. So it sounds to me like that's what you're describing, and what you're saying is that you can choose to intentionally engage in moments like this for the purpose of connection, moving through whatever you're moving through in life, realigning to purpose so that you can live a whole soul lifestyle. Am I right about that?
Yes. And I know just a little story for you. In the first year of my awakening, because I'm Peruvian, and so doing something like ayahuasca was on my mind and in my heart space and considering what and when and where and how. That was before my awakening. During my awakening in the first year, it was a real tough year. I was spending a lot of time by myself and not really being able to find a way to connect with other people and all those things. And what I had was myself to check in with, this self sourcing part of my identity that was developing. And it was so fascinating because I decided one day to like ask this part of myself. They said, "So I'm considering or I'm wanting to do an ayahuasca trip. Or what do we think about that?" And it was like, anything that you can do on ayahuasca, you can get from me here and now. And I did. And then literally it was like, whoa, like all this stuff was happening inside of me. And I was like, this is awesome. Like, this is so cool. And so that was actually like the initiator of my awareness around that, but even my more clean journey, because then it was like, oh, okay, I can understand, as we've talked about, the quality of your quest is in direct relationship with the quality of your questioning. I've always been very curious, but also a knack for asking very appropriate or aligned or intentional questions.
Question.
And
Yeah.
so that really has helped me to navigate that internal sense of self and understanding. Last thing on this is I'm not 100% have been abstained from using anything, psychedelic or otherwise, but what I understand is like when you do stuff like that, there's an integration process. And that integration process, when you don't have an internal foundation, you can have residual mess or information or data, and it's taking up space.
It's,
And when
I mean,
it's
confusion, right? When the internal system doesn't know how to process macro journeys on a soul
yeah.
level.
Yeah, and but the desire to quest is always there for everyone. It's part of our awareness and our consciousness. I feel like we've gotten so far away from the internal awareness and dynamics of our self as souls and spirits that we still have this desire inside of ourselves, but we don't have anything helping us to know what that even is. And so we're reaching to all these external things that just fulfill it when in past times that used to be handed down through our culture and through nature and through other elements, small, little by little, to highly intentional practices
Right.
before we embrace and engage in something bigger and larger. And it's just happening backwards.
And there was community around it. There was hierarchy in the sense of like the handing down. There were roles in the society.
It's a really beautiful thing, and unfortunately, right now, because it's become backwards in essence, sometimes people are just needing it so much, they're going for that big thrill that it really can distort the system. I just feel like it's really important that we take a step back and say, if that big calling is still there for you inside of you after these smaller inner journeys, by all means, I'm not against anything like that. Very true, I'm not. But what I do think is that it's helpful to have basis and understanding inside of yourself on a multi-dimensional, multi-aware, multifaceted, multi-conscious frames of awareness so that when things like that do happen, you know where to put it.
I think it's so important to note, and I have definitely experienced this, that calling, that desire, the seeking. Once you connect into that, I feel personally that it just never goes away. That desire will never leave you alone. And so much of the addiction and the distorted ways that we see ourselves really stems from not looking in the right places when it's time to find what is seeking you already, right? That's a great way to segue into the next question, which is what is the next evolution for your work? How do you see yourself bringing a whole soul lifestyle out or micro journeys of the soul in the future? What is your big, audacious vision?
My big audacious vision, because what first came to mind was like little by little, right? But the big audacious vision, like towards the end, is multiple books supporting people one on one and giving them means and methods to access themselves more deeply, sustainably. So, my big vision is essentially to support people through various stages of the process of self awakening and actualization. Between books and writing and working with people, is that a big enough vision? I like to think so.
Yeah. That sounds like your version of a whole soul lifestyle, especially me knowing you. I would say that combined with a lot of delicious food
Well, yeah. Well, yes.
and
Yeah. So
crafting and yeah.
that's a big component that I guess I left out, which is that in Wolf Soul lifestyle and coming to love yourself or have belief in yourself or all the things of the self. Or you, here's a simple thing: saying no to yourself it hurts sometimes when it's something from the soul. The soul doesn't like to be told no. Let's just say that. It likes to be loved and it likes to be nourished and it likes to be held and it likes to be experienced and it likes to be expressed. It likes all the things. It literally came here to have that experience on earth. And so it doesn't like to be told no. And so in whole soul lifestyle, what I have found in that process of doing that, not only do I want to bring this work into the world of exactly what we've been talking about today, but there's these other parts of myself in terms of expression that desire to be experienced and other ways that I know that I can support people. But for me personally, the micro journeys of the soul is the one that's unfolding right now. And then I have probably 4 or 5 other layers of myself and in embodied expression that desire to unfold.
I want to give a little context here for the listeners about when Michelle says the soul doesn't like to be told no, what she's talking about is all of her creative entrepreneurial endeavors that, a traditional business coach would say, oh, that doesn't make sense. You're going to confuse your audience. And Michelle's like, no, I want to do all the things. I agree that there is a track where it all comes together and makes sense. I also have experienced so much of this over my journey in business. This is the common theme that I notice for people who are having conversations about business like we are is the weaving of the multi-passionate creative, expressive realms into the place where it makes sense, not because we have to know in order to be successful, but because we just want to know how to use it. I've realized that I don't have to provide them all as a service for everyone else, but it does fit into what I'm doing. And when I hit that little sweet spot, I get into this coasting that feels like surfing on a rainbow cloud, and I'm like, "Oh, this is my favorite thing to do ever." Like, the ice cream, the most delicious
Mhm.
flavor of ice cream. Like, it's the best feeling ever, and there has been so many years where I haven't been able to have that taste in my mouth, we'll just put it that way, trying to integrate all the pieces of what interests me. And I love that for you with whole soul lifestyle. It really speaks to listen. I've got a lot of things I love and enjoy. I savor life, right? I savor life. I savor the journey. I savor the experience.
There's so much noise even in the entrepreneurial world that tells you you need this and that and this and that, and I'm like, "Well, you know what? Like, maybe, but maybe not me either."
Maybe not. Okay, last question for you. If you could share one message with the listeners who are feeling called to this work, what would it be?
Don't say no to your soul. Just go with it. It's
Mhm.
leading you somewhere really beautiful inside of you.
So tell us how people can find you, how they can work with you, and what you are creating.
You can find me at Whole Soul Lifestyle, and then you can put in your email and you will be opted into support for people who are interested in experiencing more of the self. You'll also get updates on my launch for my upcoming website, which I'm super excited about too. So that's at wholesoullifestyle.com. And the opt-in has to do with energy mastery and self-sovereignty. It's going to be really beautiful. It really details how you support yourself and how I show up to support you and in self-sovereignty and how that is literally, quite literally the missing key and frequency to attuning to yourself and identity and self-awareness and consciousness without any attachments or anything that's going to keep you from attuning to self authentically. So that would be that.
Thank you so much for being here. I just want to wrap up by saying Michelle is a charter member of the Sonatia Guild, and this month we created a beautiful resource where she is sharing the pre-launch of her website. She wrote an article that is really powerful. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
You're welcome.